There's a saying they have on Elm Street. One good nightmare deserves another.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead.
Welcome to Horror Month. You are all my maniacs now.
Welcome back, horror fans, to another Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I'm screwing this up.
Well, it is horror month, so you are... I don't know. I have nothing, Vince. You screwed it up.
We're 4 movies into this franchise now, so...
Yep. Movie number 4, which is called...
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 4. The Dream Master.
Oh, the Dream Master. Okay, he's the master of the dreams now.
Someone is.
Alright, so after Part 3, which was what made Freddy, I mean, it's what made him Freddy Krueger. It's what made him a household name. Even though he was popular in the first 2 movies, Part 3 did it. I mean, Part 3 was it. So when you have Part 4, what are you going to do? I mean, really, what can you do to top something like Part 3, but make a Part 4 that, I don't know, I'm going to tell you right now, Vince, about Part 4, and I know we've been talking about this on the phone, but we had just got done watching Hellraiser, and, I mean, literally, we just got done watching the first 3 Hellraiser movies before I started watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and we get to this one, and the first thing both my wife and I say, it's Hellraiser! They made it into Hellraiser, and I know you're going to argue with me about this, but they did. This was, the first half of the movie anyway, is really Hellraiser-esque. It's very Hellraiser. It's Hellraiser. It's a Nightmare on Hellraiser Street.
And from what you told me over the phone, on text messages and whatnot, you're talking about because it's got all these chains in it. And yes, I think this one went overboard with all the chains, but they're just hanging there. They're just chains that are hanging there, and it's there to give atmosphere to the boiler room, to make things scary, to make things ominous, to make things dark, and that's what the chains were there for.
Any minute I was waiting for Pinhead to show up. Gonna tear your soul apart. Is that what he says? I think that's what he says.
We'll tear your soul apart.
I actually have a box, but I'm just using Rubik's Cube because I don't know where my box is.
That's what it was there for. That's what all the chains were there for. And if you go back and watch all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, just about every single one of them have chains at some point, mostly in the boiler room scenes.
There wasn't just chains, it was chains on top of chains on top of chains on top of chains on top of more chains, and then there was more chains. And it's like when she walked through the house, just the way the house looked in the very beginning of the movie, it was very Hellraiser looking. It just looked like Hellraiser. And literally, like I said, I just got done watching the Hellraiser movies and then came to this, and I was like, this is Hellraiser! I mean, obviously the person who made this movie was influenced by Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and the scene where Freddy comes back from the dead was totally Hellraiser. Where, you know, they show Frank and the flesh is coming back onto his body and his eyes and comes up in his muscles and that was Hellraiser, 100% Hellraiser. All that was Hellraiser.
But they did that in other films too.
Yeah, but it was Hellraiser.
Whatever. Anyway, I mean, I got a little bit of a story for this film too.
So do I, actually.
Way back when this movie came out, I believe it was 1988, and when it came out, I was still in high school, and I had a friend that I'm no longer friends with, haven't been friends with him for a long, long time, but at the time we were pretty good friends, and we both liked Freddy Krueger. We finally decided to skip school.
Oh my God. Vince skipping school. Here we go. Here, the truth has finally come out. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, the goody two-shoes person that you think I was, nope.
Now, can I say something real quick here, Vince? I'm going to interrupt your story real fast here.
Alright, it's going to take longer, but go ahead.
I also skipped school one time, my entire time going to school. It was in high school. I skipped it one time. It was also to go see a movie.
Okay, is that it, or?
No, I was going to tell you what movie it was, because I'm sure people really want to know.
Probably not, but go ahead.
The one movie that I skipped school to go see, it wasn't Nightmare on Elm Street, but it was Spaceballs. I skipped school to go see Spaceballs.
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
Spaceballs.
That was it. Yeah, Spaceballs.
This was the first time I had ever skipped school. I had never skipped school before that. Ever.
Yeah, me neither. That was my only time.
You flopped.
The difference here, though, is I didn't skip school necessarily to go see Nightmare on Elm Street 4. We were just skipping school. That's all it was.
Right. Oh, keep going.
No, we just didn't feel like going to school that day. And then we saw a commercial for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I was like, oh yeah, that comes out today. And my friend goes, you want to go see it? I'm like, well, hell yeah, I want to go see it. He goes, no, I mean like right now. So we're looking in the paper, and this is the first and only time I've ever done this as well, was the movie actually started at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It was like really, really early for a movie. Usually movies around here start at like, maybe the earliest is 10. We were like, yeah, let's go see it, because it was only like $3. So anyway, it came out of the movie theater, and I was suddenly, I loved Freddy Krueger before. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 made me a huge, huge Freddy fan, but Nightmare 4 took it over the top. Nightmare on Elm Street, for me, has always been the Star Wars of horror films, because I love this whole franchise. I love every story that they've come up with in this franchise. I can't say everything's been executed well, or done well, or even sometimes acted well, but I love this movie. I love this franchise. I just love everything they do with it. It's innovative and creative and all that kind of thing. I've also gotten inspired from it from time to time. So, when I got home, I started looking for Freddy Krueger stuff. I started looking for Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. And there wasn't actually too much merchandise until Part 4 came out. People seem to think, oh, there was been Freddy Krueger stuff everywhere. No, there wasn't. Nightmare 4 is when they started releasing all kinds of things for Nightmare on Elm Street. They had dolls. They had talking dolls. They had spitballs. They had t-shirts. They had records. They came out with the soundtrack. With all this stuff that was out there, believe it or not, you couldn't find a Freddy glove. I never did, anyway, and I couldn't, unless they were like movie replicas that were like hundreds of dollars. You really didn't see any kind of Freddy gloves or Freddy sweaters or hats or anything. So I sat there with the same friend, and I was like, I really think we could make a glove. We could make a Freddy glove. We can make that. If he could make it, why can't we make it? So we started looking into stuff and looking at all the pictures that I gathered all this Freddy Krueger, everything that I could find to make the glove. Every picture, every movie scene, everything I could find of Freddy's glove to make a Freddy glove. And I did, and here it is. This was my original Freddy Krueger glove.
Fucking A.
From 1988, Freddy Krueger glove.
When this came out, again, I was super Freddy Krueger fan because of the third one. I was, super fan at this point. And when the fourth one came out, there was a local movie theater around us that was doing a marathon, and they were showing Nightmare on Elm Street 1 through 3, and then at midnight they were going to show part 4. So me and a friend of mine went there and sat through the first 3 films in the movie theater. And it was a really interesting experience because I've never done that before. Sitting there through 4 movies is a long time. And they gave you little breaks between the movies. But between 1 and 3, there wasn't that many people. There was, there was some people there, but when 4 started, everybody came in the theater and the whole theater was packed at midnight. But yeah, that was an interesting experience. I've done it once before, or after with Back to the Future. When Back to the Future came out, they showed 1 and 2, and then they showed 3, which was a little bit better because it wasn't sitting through 4 films, it was only sitting through 3. But that's my story. I actually got to see this with the entire series behind it, and it was really cool.
And the one thing I can add to that is I remember you telling me about that. I remember you sent me, I think, the ad for it. Like the ad that actually announced it, that they were doing a Freddy Krueger marathon. And down here, they did nothing like that. They did absolutely nothing like that I remember. I don't remember them ever. I don't remember ever even seeing anything like that.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about the movie now. It's coming from this box set. So, alright, part 4 starts with the characters from part 3, and it's interesting that they brought them back in this film, which I really liked it that they did that, and I think the actress is different in this one than she was in part 3 as well. Is she not the main person?
Yeah, Kristen Parker was played by Patricia Arquette in the third one, and this one she's played by Tuesday Night. What? That's her name.
Oh my god, okay.
Her name's Tuesday Night. But anyway...
So Tuesday Night is, oh my god. So I guess her sister is Wednesday Night?
I don't know, I've never met her sister.
They bring a different actress in, they bring the same 2 characters, Kincaid and what's the other guy's name?
Joey.
Yeah, Joey. They bring these 2, this is the last 2 remaining survivors from the other film, and it was cool to see them. It was. I enjoyed seeing them in the beginning of this film. Main problem here, for me, the biggest problem out of this whole entire film was the acting. The acting was atrocious in this film. It was horrible in this movie. It was some of the worst acting ever in any movie, a horror film, that I can remember. The worst of all the actors, though, was a Karate Kid. That guy was awful in this movie. He was awful in this movie.
Okay, I didn't have any problem with anybody's acting in this film. I really didn't.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible, Vince. It was laughable funny. It was laughable funny, horrible bad. It was bad.
I'm not saying it was Oscar-winning material, but it's Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm not,
Yeah, well, I understand it's Nightmare on Elm Street.
You asked me this once before. Who goes to a horror film and expect, Oscar-winning acting?
Me?
Oh, well, you better get off that train.
Well, I mean, the acting in the first 3 films wasn't bad. They were just, they're acting, but...
Well, it wasn't bad in here either.
The kid that played the Karate Kid in this movie was horrible. His acting was just as bad as it got. It was cringeworthy. It was like Anakin from part 2 bad. It was that bad.
I didn't think so. I didn't think his was... like I said, I didn't think it was Oscar-winning. I didn't think it was spectacular, but I didn't think it was all that bad.
That was it. I mean, he was horrible. The other characters were okay, just okay, but him, the boyfriend wasn't bad. Her boyfriend in this film was okay. He's probably the best one, I guess the best actor in the whole thing. But the rest of them, oh my god, no. Just no.
If there was one person in here, I said their acting was probably not near it. And she was in the third one, was the mom, Kristen's mom. Because she shows up and basically says the same lines that she had in the third movie. Andale, andale!
So, and again, like you said, Freddy looked the best. I think this is probably, between part 3 and part 4, this is the best he ever looked. His makeup in this film was amazing. It was phenomenal. It was so, so good in this movie. And I didn't remember this film. Now, part 1 through 3, I have memorized, you know, because I've seen them thousands of times. 4 through whatever 7, I've only ever seen a couple times, a handful of times. So I didn't really even remember this film that much. So it's kind of like watching a new movie for me. And I don't know, it was okay. I thought that the story, once it got past the middle and towards the middle to the end, I thought it started getting better. But up to that point, for me, it was hard to watch. It was just dog peeing fire.
I thought that was amazing.
Dog peeing fire brought Freddy back to life.
It's a nightmare, Dave.
Don't understand that. Will never understand it. I realize it's a nightmare. It's stupid.
It's a nightmare. It's a dream.
Yeah, but why would a dog peeing fire bring Freddy back?
It didn't bring Freddy back. It just opened up the ground.
No, he peed on Freddy and it brought him back from the dead.
Okay. So?
Dog urine.
Dave, it's a nightmare. He was dreaming. He was having a nightmare.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a nightmare. It was a nightmare to watch that scene. I can agree with you that. But come on, the other movies that brought him back was fine. The way they brought him back in the other films were fine. This one, they're like, dog pee and fire. That's a good idea. Let's put that in there. No, terrible.
I thought it was inventive. I thought it was different. I thought it was creative. I thought, because it is a nightmare that he's having, you know, weird crap happens when you dream. So, you know, why wouldn't that be? Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, it's weird, but it goes with the motif. So I had zero problem with that. I absolutely love that.
But there was scenes in the movie that I really liked. My favorite scene in the whole film was when that woman was going to go and work out, and they were trying to get to her, and they kept coming around the building and getting into the truck. That was inventive. I really love that scene. I think that's the best scene in this entire film.
I agree. I love that too. I love that whole thing. I mean, it was awesome because it was Freddy keeping them busy while he went after the girl who hated bugs and was all about fitness.
And that is what a good nightmare is. Dogs peeing fire? No. That was a good representation of what a nightmare would be, trying to repeat the same thing and not getting where you're going. That was really good. Great sequence in the movie. Love that. And I also like the story here wasn't bad to where now Alice has all of the powers. I mean, she basically is Super Alice by the end of the film. She combines everybody. Every time somebody dies, she gets their ability, which I thought was kind of cool. I didn't mind that at all.
That's one of the things I really liked about it. That was the whole thing about it. Because you even mentioned this in our last review with Nightmare on Elm Street 3. You were saying that you didn't think they did anything with the dream powers, and they did get away from that. I will say that they did get away from some of that, but with this one, it was like everybody had their powers, but they didn't really know that they had powers. You know, it wasn't like Nightmare 3 where they sat in a room and said, well, my thing is strength, or my thing is I'm the wizard master, or whatever. So they weren't all together where they knew what they were doing. And obviously Kristen never really talked to them about that. So these people didn't know they had any strengths or any superpowers in their dreams or whatever. But every time somebody would die, that's what she did. She became the person that collected their power, as well as being able to pull them into a dream, like Kristen did.
Yeah, but I don't think the thing with this, the difference between this and that, was she didn't take their dream powers. She just actually took what they were good at when they were alive, and she used them in her dreams, basically.
Yeah, which is what they did in Nightmare 3.
No, they actually came up with their abilities in the dreams, but she didn't actually take that. She actually took what they were good at when they were alive, and then she used them in a dream. But they weren't actually good at that when they were alive in Nightmare 3. They just came up, that's what they wanted to be in their dreams, and that's what they were.
But anyway, I loved that whole idea. I loved that whole... That was the biggest part of the story in this, and it was fantastic. And I loved the battle at the end between her and Freddy. Absolutely loved it. Loved it being in that church. I love the whole scene where they're going down the tunnel. That absolutely floored me. I was like, oh my god, that is fantastic. And see, the thing about all these fantastic scenes is the director, Rennie Harlin, really has that kind of a vision. And I think this is the one movie they really executed somebody's vision of dreams and nightmares to its fullest. And you also had the whole idea that in the 80s there's MTV. And MTV used a lot of this. I mean, Freddy by now, I mean, he was in MTV with part 2 and part 3, but now it was like full-fledged MTV. So that's why you get the soundtrack too.
I agree with you. Out of all the movies, out of every single Nightmare movie, the way they brought Freddy back from the dead in this movie was the absolute worst. The way they got rid of him, I think, was the absolute best. I think his death at the end of this movie was amazing. I thought it was cool. I liked the fact that all the souls were literally coming out of him and tearing him apart. So there was a scene there when he was dying and all the souls were tearing him apart that these boobs show up in his chest.
Boobs, Dave!
It's like this woman trying to get out of his chest, and this naked woman, and you can see the boobs coming down to her, coming out of his chest like for about 5 seconds, and they disappear. And I'm like, that's Linnea Quigley! I recognized her boobs!
That was her one scene in there.
I recognized her boobs. I mean, she has certain, type of boobs that I guess one would recognize, and I recognized her boobs. Linnea Quigley's boobs are inside Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, that was Linnea Quigley from Return of the Living Dead and Night of the Demons and all those great B horror flicks.
How's this for a wet dream?
I absolutely loved the whole chest bursting scene at the end. Awesome. I loved this movie. Absolutely loved it.
Well, I wouldn't go say as far as I love the movie. I think it was one of the weaker ones.
No.
Second half of the movie, I enjoyed. The first half of the movie, not so much. So my battery's running out here on my camera, so I'm going to have to give a rating to this thing. So I am rating Nightmare on Elm Street for a 4 out of 5.
And I absolutely love the film. This is one of my favorite films out of the franchise is part 4. I loved it as much as I loved part 3. Was it as dark and scary as the first one? No. And that's one thing I will say this one was missing, is that it got away from making Freddy the dark, scary guy that he was. And this one also put all the jokes in the forefront. Now it was Freddy, every time he showed up, he was doing a pun. But it gets worse in the next few films coming up. So, but despite all that, I really enjoyed this film. No, the acting wasn't Oscar-winning material, but I enjoyed the vision of it. I enjoyed the special effects. I enjoyed Freddy's look, obviously. He looked the best he's ever looked. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed everything about this movie, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I give it a big 5 out of 5. First of all, we don't have any audio commentaries again. But the first thing that we do have is an extra called Krueger, Freddy Krueger.
This actually is one of the most interesting extras, I think, on the entire set here.
Yeah, this was actually pretty cool, but once again, it's kind of like you said, it's like they're talking already. They're already doing an interview and they're already talking, so they just kind of clip where they want to set this extra in there, and they just popped it into place.
So Bob Shea comes on and talks about how he hated the guy that came in for the job for the director. And here you have a huge success with Nightmare 3. So what do they do with Nightmare 4? Just like they do with all the films, is they're trying to push it out and not taking their time with it. And just this guy somehow ended up as a director from this film. I don't know how he even got into the movie. As far as I know, he's never directed a film before. And Bob Shea's like, I hated this guy. I hated him. I hated his ideas. I didn't like what he was telling me. He said he was living in an apartment with one other guy eating beans out of a can. I don't know where we got this guy from, but we were under pressure to make this film, so he got the job.
Rennie Harlin is the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 4. He actually went on to direct Die Hard 2, Die Harder. But this was like, I think, his second or third project. He actually did a movie before this called Prison. It was a low-budget horror film that he did, and the people that actually picked him, which I think was Rachel Talalay, again, who's the director of Freddy's Dead, I think her and somebody else actually picked Rennie Harlin for this because of that movie Prison. Because they were like, he had a really good vision.
I actually went to go see Prison in the theaters because of Fangoria magazine. It looked really cool. I actually saw that. I only saw it once, but I did see it in theaters.
I had never seen it. I've never seen that movie.
I don't remember having any memory of seeing it, but I remember going to see it.
But Rennie Harlin also comes in on this and talks about how he could feel just in meeting Bob Shea that, you know, he wasn't interested in him at all. And so he had to try to convince him, hey, well, I've got this idea of doing this, I've got an idea of doing that, and he wanted to expand on what they did with Nightmare on Elm Street 3, but he wanted to do more dream worlds and more dreamscapes and more with the whole look of Freddy being in a nightmare. And again, this is something I said in the review, is at this point in time, Freddy was MTV. It was that point in time that MTV was really big. Music videos were really big. And you know, the whole visual style. So that's what he was going for in this. It was like this MTV kind of Freddy Krueger. And making him the hero. And
Bob Shea's like, why would we get a Finnish guy to direct an American horror movie? Makes no sense to me.
The other thing you were talking about is the time. Yeah, they rushed to make this film, again, with almost no money, and they didn't even have a script. And the whole reason why they didn't have a script for it was because at the same time they started this movie, right after Rennie Harlin got assigned to direct the film, the Screenwriters Guild went on strike.
Yeah, and they said they were basically making this movie during their lunch break. They would have a lunch break and then try to figure out what the next scene of the film was going to be. And he was drawing storyboards, and he was actually making the film from storyboards because they didn't have a script. Now, as you watch my review there right before this, I can say I wasn't crazy about this film, and I guess that's why, because it just was not as good as, well, nowhere around as good as Part 3, or Part 2, or Part 1. So I can kind of see why that is now, actually. Well, I've never had a problem with that, like I said in the review. And for not having a script, I think they did really well with coming up with the stuff that they did come up with. You know, he even talks about how they just started out with this vague idea that, okay, well, we're going to have Alice, we're going to have Freddy, and they're in front of the church. That was it. They didn't have anything, and they just kind of put it together, and I think it came out well because of that. So up next is Hopeless Chest. This extra is about how they did the Nightmare Pizza scene, where Freddy sticks his blade into the meatball and he picks up the screaming meatball. So to kind of talk a little bit how they made that sequence, and they talk about how they made the chest sequence in the movie at the end of this film.
Now, I will say this, with this Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and a making of, I would have liked to seen, again, a making of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 on this Blu-ray set. It would have been nice to see that. There is one that they did quite some time ago when they had laser discs that I have that is an entire making of Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And Steve Johnson is the one that did the chest, everything to do with the chest of souls and everything, and the people bursting out of the souls coming out of Freddy's chest. He's the one that did that entire thing. And in here they show a lot more than what they did in that making of, but what they showed in the making of was just as good. And I really wish they could have shown all of that on here, because it's fantastic. I love the behind the scenes stuff that they did on this.
Yeah, they built this, and you can't tell in the movie, but they built this huge Freddy, and it had, the fake chest where they had the people coming out of it, and that's where Linnea Quigley's boobs were.
Boobs, Dave!
And it was like this big puppet, it was like wobbling back and forth, and had like a big rubber chest, and people were coming out. And yeah, it was really cool to see how they did that one scene, and I would have loved to see how they did all the scenes in this movie. But no.
Yeah, then they show kind of the puppet version of it, where I liked what they showed here. They showed this, one of to test the effect, they had somebody standing up against the church wall, and with this fake chest in front of him, and they show all the arms and stuff bursting out of him, and what they eventually do with Freddy Krueger at the end of the film. All these arms and souls come bursting out of him, and it was like a smaller version of that great big chest of souls, because they still had the same kind of dental din, is what it's called. Is this thin rubber, or sort of like spandex, but it was actually stuff they used for dentists use it, actually.
Up next is Howard Berger. Is it Berger or Burger?
Burger. Burger, like a hamburger.
And he is the one from Creepshow, is he not?
Yeah, he was on Creepshow.
Because I remember seeing him on the Creepshow one that we did last year. And he came on there, and this was a pretty cool story about how he was doing Freddy's makeup in a trailer. And when all the fans found out that he was in the trailer, they all came out. And he said by the time he got the makeup on, there was thousands of people outside, and they had to have the police and everybody out there. And he's kept telling Freddy, or Robert Englund, stick your hand out, or stick your head out, or, say something to the fans. And, it's just crazy on how big Freddy was back then.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool, interesting story. And then he also goes into actually showing how he put Freddy's makeup on, and what he would do when they actually show clips, behind the scene footage of him putting the actual pieces of Freddy's makeup on to Robert Englund. And a lot of people think, I guess, that was Kevin Yeager did all of that, but actually Kevin Yeager is the one that did the design, and Howard Berger is the one that actually just applies it to Robert Englund.
And Robert Englund looked like he was talking the entire time, like he never shut up. The entire time putting the makeup on, he was just constantly talking.
And that footage that they use in here, where what you're talking about there, is actually on that making of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 that was made all those years ago.
So up next is the last extra here, and it's called The Finish Line. And once the movie came out, and once it was a huge success, Bob Shea, hiring a finished director maybe wasn't that bad. So then he took the director in his limo, and they were driving up and down the streets of Hollywood, looking at all the lines outside the theaters, drinking vodka.
Yeah, they rode around drinking vodka and watching. They couldn't believe that the lines were as long as they were for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And especially, like you said, Bob Shea, he didn't know why he hired this guy. He didn't think the movie was going to be any good, and they watched all these dailies and stuff, and he just thought this is going to tank. This is going to be the worst one ever, and it ended up being the most profitable Nightmare on Elm Street out of the entire series.
So there you go. There are all the extras from part 4. Not a whole lot here. There were some actually good ones. I was pretty entertained by the first couple of them here. So yeah, just short ones, but they actually wasn't too bad.
I actually enjoyed a lot of these extras on this one. It was fun to hear about all the stuff, and especially to see the special effects.
And we have more Freddy for you for Horror Month, because it doesn't end here. It goes on to part 5, where Freddy has a baby.
Freddy delivers in part 5, The Dream Child.
All of you Maniacs return for that, and we will see you then. In the meantime, enjoy all the other stuff that's here on Horror Month. For 31 straight days we're doing this, because we are as crazy as you guys are.
If not crazier. We are the Maniacs, after all.
You are all my Maniacs.
Dream Warriors!